Hi, Mom. Are you planning to receive an epidural or are you undecided? Well, let me tell you my story and hopefully maybe it will help you to decide whether or not you want to receive an epidural. I am a mother of five sons. With the first child, I labored for about 13 hours. And at the end of labor, I was so exhausted. When they took me for delivery, they gave me something to put me to sleep and they delivered the baby. But child number 2, 3, and 4 was natural birth. Lord have mercy. It wasn't by choice, but Lord have mercy. But child number 5, for some strange reason, they decided to give me an epidural. I never asked for it, but I'm so thankful that they did. But what it did was when I received the epidural, it took me from like 4 or 5 centimeters. It took me to 10 centimeters within 20 minutes. And shortly after that, I delivered the baby, and I felt no pain. I felt no sensation, and I was so very very grateful. But that might not happen for you. You might come in, especially if this is your first child. You might come in and you might labor for many hours like I did. And you might have decided, well, I don't want to have an epidural because I want to have a natural birth. Well, that's great. But then when the pain starts, you might change your mind. But here's the thing to consider. Once you're too far along in your labor, they won't be able to give you an epidural. So you need to know now if you want to have an epidural. But if you should have an epidural early in your laboring process, keep in mind that the longer the epidural is in you, the greater the chances are that the baby, that you can get a fever, and that fever can be passed on to the baby. And if the baby gets a fever, the baby's going to have to receive antibiotics. And therefore, if you're planning to breastfeed, it's going to cause a separation between the two of you. You're not going to be able to breastfeed right away. So that's something you need to consider as well. Also, with the epidural, I'm telling you, I felt no pain. If you receive an epidural and it's done right, you will not feel any pain. It blocks from a certain area down. Okay, it blocks all pain, all sensation. But if that epidural is left in you too long, it can cause heaviness in the legs, and you won't be able to hold your legs up. Somebody else might have to do that for you. But those are a couple of things that you have to consider. And also you have to consider, where do you live at? Do you live in the urban area or do you live in the rural area? Women who use epidurals who live in the urban area is about 90%. And women who live in the rural area is less. And the reason that it's less is because anesthesiologists are not out there because it's so far out. And the hospitals are in the inner city, so it's easier for the anesthesiologist to get to the inner city versus the rural area. So think about that. Do you live in the rural area? Do you want to get an epidural? Should you change your mind and make sure you're not too far along in your labor process, and ask your doctor how far along can you go before you can change your mind, because once you get too far out there, you're going to have to go all the way. But I'm here to tell you, when I received that epidural, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And yes, it did speed my labor up. And no, my baby did not get a fever. But if you're staying you too long, there's a possibility that you can get the fever. And if you're planning to breastfeed your baby, it will cause separation. So I hope that my story helps you to make up your mind whether or not you want to receive an epidural. Good luck on your baby.